Welcome to another unit in this course on economics. This time I'm going to talk about how fiscal policy works in the context of the Mundell-Fleming-Model. In this context, we need to consider fiscal policy. This means either a change in government expenditures or a change in taxes. In particular, we can differentiate between restrictive and expansive fiscal policy. Expansive fiscal policy means we increase government expenditures or we decrease taxes. Restrictive, that's the other way around, increasing taxes or decreasing government expenditures. Due to the fact that the effects are basically the opposite, if I consider restrictive as compared to expansive policy, here I'm just going to talk about expansive fiscal policy, with the restrictive version just being the exact opposite argumentation. Also, we need to consider in the Mundell-Fleming model, we also have the foreign exchange market. So there's two archetypical situations regarding foreign exchange. We could have a fixed exchange rate regime or a flexible exchange rate regime. Here, I'm taking a look at both of them. So if you actually have something in between, the solution will be something in between the two results we might get here. Okay, with those comments beforehand, let's jump right into it. And in this context, I'm going to just start with the classical Mundell-Fleming model. So here with the idea IS curve, LM curve, ZZ curve, they all meet in the same point, which in this context is the general economic equilibrium. Here, this point. Now, if we have expansive fiscal policy, this means that our IS curve moves to the right, since due to expansive policy, we either have the companies or the government consume more goods, or the households have more money available due to a decrease in taxes and will also consume more. So in any of these situations, expenditures demand will increase, moving the IS curve to the right, giving us a new IS curve and a new domestic equilibrium, which now lies above the ZZ curve. So in other words, we also get a new interest rate, the R2, which is higher than the world interest rate, the R1, given via the ZZ curve. So this lies above the ZZ curve, meaning the interest rate in our country, domestically speaking, is higher than the interest rate abroad, making it more profitable to invest in our country. So a lot of investments will flow into the country. Considering the example, we have here a country which has the euro, then there's a lot of demand for euros because all the other investors want to invest in the euro country. Well, if the demand for euros increases, this would actually impact the exchange rate. The value of the euro would increase, the euro would appreciate, if it actually can. And that's the question, whether we have here fixed or flexible exchange rates. In this example, I'm just assuming we have flexible exchange rates. With flexible exchange rates, as I said, the euro will appreciate, our currency will become more valuable, meaning, on the other hand, we can actually import more because we get more for our currency. However, for other countries, our goods become comparatively more expensive, so we will export less. So in total, our net exports will decrease. And this is what we see here, the movement back of the IS curve, because if the net exports decrease, overall domestic demand, or demand for domestic goods, will decrease as well, moving the IS curve back to the left. And it's moved as far to the left as it was originally, because in any other situation, the domestic equilibrium, and that's the domestic interest rate, will always be larger than the ZZ curve. Only here do we achieve the same situation as abroad. So only here will this effect stop. And well, we're basically there where we started. So in other words, if we have expensive fiscal policy with flexible exchange rates, there won't be any effect at all. Government will spend some money, will have a short-term positive effect on GDP, will have an increasing effect, short-term increasing effect on the interest rate, but nothing long-term. Okay, so much for the flexible exchange rate regime. Now have a look what happens if we have a fixed exchange rate regime. For this, I'm going to switch to the next slide. Same original situation, expensive fiscal policy, movement of the IS curve, getting a new interest rate which is larger than the global one. So we get a lot of capital inflows. The euro would appreciate. Now we have fixed exchange rates. So the euro is not allowed to appreciate. To keep the euro from appreciating, the central bank actually starts acting. Well, at this moment, there's a relatively high demand for euros. That's what actually pushing the price for the euros upwards. So what does the central bank do? Well, they satisfy the additional demand for euros. So they perform expansive monetary policy, increase the money supply of euros to make the euro cheaper again. Expansive monetary policy means our LM curve will move to the right. And it will move to the right until our domestic equilibrium is again lying on the ZZ curve, so being a global equilibrium as well. Then we get this new overall economic equilibrium with the same interest rate as before, but a higher GDP. So what does this mean? This means that fiscal policy in the context of the Mundell-Fleming model is only effective, but here positively so in regards to GDP, if we have a fixed exchange rate regime. If we have a flexible exchange rate regime, fiscal policy won't have any effect on GDP developments at all. So in other words, if we, soften this up a little bit, this would mean the more fixed our exchange rate regime is, the more effective will government policy be. And that's then everything there is on the effects of fiscal policy in the context of the Mundell-Fleming model. So as this concludes this session, I just say goodbye and see you next time.